The WHO's regional director for Europe also expressed grave concern over the rising number of COVID cases on the continent, saying Europe is once again the pandemic's epicenter. Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have President of the Irish Freedom Party, Hermann Kelly, who's joining us from Dublin. And also we have Secretary General of the CIPI Foundation, Mr. Paolo Raffone, joining us from Brussels. Let's start off with Mr. Kelly in Dublin. Sir, what do you make of the recent remarks divulged by the World Health Organization?
I would be a bit wary and skeptical of modelling. In our experience so far, we could see already that the modelling given by Neil Ferguson of Imperial College at the start of the pandemic put the world into a massive panic. The modelling, not only in Imperial College, but also in Ireland, that they systematically overestimate the number of hospitalisations and the number of deaths. And it gives those in power and in authority, it gives them greater encouragement to be more draconian in their call for lockdown. Now, Sweden and Denmark in the last few weeks have ceased all restrictions, all lockdowns on travel and on work, and they have admitted, look, COVID is endemic. It cannot be stopped by vaccination or by lockdown. It is coming. It is just better to prepare by looking after the elderly and the vulnerable, the obese, those who are vulnerable, and dealing with the situation. But kind of scary models as we've had in the past from, for example, from the WHO or from Imperial College, etc. I don't think they do much good. Look, Stanford professor Ioannidis basically found out that the infection fatality rate for COVID is approximately 0.15%. Like, it is not, we've got to, I believe, we've got to stop this kind of monomania of this idea that COVID is the only medical problem in the world. It is not. Many people die from cancer. Many people die from heart disease, from other circulatory diseases. COVID is probably about 6 or 7 on the list of causes of death for medical reasons at the moment across the world. So I think we've got to stop the monomania, get back to normal life, and admit that the infection fatality rate of COVID does not justify draconian restrictions on travel and work for people who should be able to get back to life and to work again. Like, there was just a study there in the Lancet infectious disease. It's a very well-known medical journal, and basically they said that people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated have a similar rate of transmission of COVID. So it's been shown that in regards both getting the disease and also transmitting COVID, that vaccination is not some kind of golden bullet, which is either a cure or a prevention of cases and transmission.
Paolo Raffone, I saw you nodding there. Give us your thoughts on the concerns expressed by the WHO's regional director for Europe.
Well, of course, the modeling, as it has been pointed out, are not the verb or the truth. So it's a study based on certain dynamics of numbers. We have seen in the past that this does not correspond necessarily to what happens. I tend to believe that, yes, the spread is restarting because, of course, there is the cold season coming, so there are a number of conjunctural reasons of temperatures that help this happening. And the return to normal life also allows people to move, to meet, to encounter, to gather. And this increases the spreading, and this was well known and predicted also. So the issue is to keep a very, very close monitoring of what is happening, but to raise these alarms is really out of place, probably.
And are you expecting to see European countries heed these calls, maybe put back in restrictions? Our guest, Mr. Kelly, was also mentioning that some of these restrictions are draconian and unnecessary. That was the case in the past. Nevertheless, a lot of European countries implemented those COVID restrictions, and we saw the effect that it had on the economies of those countries.
Definitely, the lockdown period was a tragic moment, taken because of the delays that took place in the first part of addressing the epidemic. Nowadays, what should be done is to monitor. To monitor means to have tools that allow to see how the spread is going and if there are specific clusters where this is concentrating, and then to address those clusters. So the use of the Green Pass, for instance, is a very practical way to monitor the spread of the virus. There are also other apps that can be used to see what happens when people gather and how many people are exposed to eventually get infected. Certainly, to increase the number of vaccinated people, this will diminish the danger. So those states that have not reached the minimum standard or have not completed the sufficiently large number of vaccinated people, they should do it so as soon as possible.
I would certainly...
Yeah, I wanted to get your final thoughts on the issue as well.
I would say, well, yeah, respiratory diseases are normally seasonal, and we're going into the winter, so it would be normal that respiratory diseases would go up in numbers. But I think we also have to keep a very close eye on fundamental rights of people to work, to travel, to see their family. And personally, I find it very worrying that if we allow a state to dictate to people that they must take a chemical or biological agent inside their body, we have to ask, what freedom do people really have left if the mandatory COVID certificate is enforced on people, and that especially healthcare workers who worked in hospitals last year and cared for sick people and old people are now being threatened with unemployment and thrown on the street because they want to choose for themselves whether they want to take a COVID vaccine or not. Many people, like myself, have already had COVID, and we want to make a decision. No, we don't need a vaccine. We've already had the disease, and we would like to just get on and accept our natural immunity, and that there isn't a specific requirement or say need for the COVID vaccine. And so we would like to get on with normal life and to have our fundamental rights of freedom of travel and work, that they be respected by all the governments across the world. So I'm very pleased that countries like Denmark and Norway have opened up and stopped all restrictions. And I think we have to begin to accept that COVID is endemic, and we just have to get on with life, doing the best use of treatment and prevention, and that may that is medically possible at the moment, but we have to respect also fundamental rights.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Hermann Kelly, President of the Irish Freedom Party, joining us from Dublin. And thanks to Paul Vodafone, Secretary General of the CIPI Foundation, speaking to us from Brussels. With that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of the News Review. But do stay tuned. There's plenty more to